Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. Welcome to Just One Truth. In this episode, I'm just going to cover the keys and let you know that when I do decode what it is that I'm looking for when I say spiritual. I think we all have an idea of what the word means: spiritual, religious, some combination thereof. Some people combine them and call them the same thing. They really are not defined well, and I need to define them well, or at least define what I'm doing when I'm covering what I'm talking about so that I can be understood. When I was growing up, we went to church 3 times a week. I believed in God. As a little kid, I was told that God was there. I can remember in church services having somebody up front praying and calling out people that had some kind of afflictions. No, this isn't in Texas or isn't one of those evangelical kind of churches. I think a lot of churches do this stuff where they'll get a special speaker in and they come up and they pray and they'll, call out to God to heal somebody with an ailment here or there. And as a little kid, I watched that and I was like, whoa, just like that, God is healing those people. Whoa. I didn't have any doubt about it. However, the home life that I was in was abusive and hurtful. And I can remember praying to God and Jesus myself, asking for help and never getting that help. So I was always mystified as to how it was that God would heal some people but wouldn't help little kids. I remember thinking maybe I'm just not doing it right, or God doesn't listen to little kids. Maybe I'm supposed to grow up and be an adult first. I don't know. I didn't know. Anyway, there's a point in my life where I kind of had reason to say, you know what, I'm not sure if I believe this anymore. Jesus and God didn't help me. And I don't know if these grown-ups are on the level or not, whether they're just saying it's true or whether they believe it's true or they feel it's true. As a little kid, you don't know. You figure either people are being truthful or they're lying to you. You don't know things like psychosomatic. As I continued to grow up, home life got a little bit more severe. I had a brother who committed suicide, and I found him in the woods after he had hung himself. It was a lot of tragedy. There was a lot of heartache, a lot of praying to God and Jesus that didn't help. It didn't do anything. Never a thing. And at some point you just give up and say, boy, this is not working. It's not working for me. If there is a God, God shows favorites. So I left that. But there was still something inside of me that was kind of different. I remember thinking I wanted answers. I wanted to know what happened to my brother Larry. Before I found Larry, I had words occur to me in my head. It was a thought, but it was very matter of fact. I heard the words, "Larry's dead." And that was before I even went outside. He was alone in the woods. Nobody was with him. No other minds, no other people. Nobody knew about what was going on. So this came to me ahead of time. And then I'm the one that found him just a few minutes later. So I knew that there was something out there that was kind of magical. I didn't understand how it worked. It seemed to me like something was beyond me, and it seemed like it could be spirits or something. I don't know. That was my explanation, because that's what you're told when you're a kid. As you grow up, you start realizing, I don't actually see spirits. I see sometimes mind processes working that makes you go, whoa, that was kind of magical there. And you realize these are kind of natural and normal things. Sometimes they're obscure. Sometimes they don't mean anything. Sometimes it's probably just coincidence, much of the time. So I knew that there was something there bigger than us, bigger than our 5 senses, and I had no idea what it was. But I looked for it. I wanted to know what happened to my brother. I wanted to know if he had a soul, if he was somewhere, or if it was just over with. And I looked with a very open mind. And I had Christians tell me, yes, God is real. We've had healing. We have proof. And you look at the proof and you're like, yeah, I've had that kind of proof before. And somebody else will tell you about crystal energy and they have proof and they show you something Or they tell you something and you try it and go, well, it didn't really happen for me, but I believe it happened for them. They're convinced. Some people thought astrology. Some people think spirits. There's all manner of things. And I talked to people who were convinced that they had the right way and that everybody else was wrong. But I can remember talking to all of them and saying, well, they believe that happened, and they believe that happened, and they believe that happened. Different people with different beliefs have had something happen. I don't know why, but instead of just dismissing it out of hand and saying, okay, they must be wrong, and they must be wrong, and they must be wrong, I somehow had this idea that everybody was a little bit right. And I don't know why that was, because nobody ever told me that part. And it was because in talking to them, you can just kind of get sincerity out of them. You get that they believe that. Whether it's true or not, they believe it to be true. And so it caused me to continue to search. I was still looking for answers. Later on in life, what I eventually came to realize was that everybody was dealing with a mind, a brain, and the way that they think, an emotional state of being, and a universe with other people. That those were the elements that everybody had in common. Everybody was working with those. Whatever else was out there or supposedly out there, I didn't see it. That's where I like using the terms outward looking or inward looking. Outward looking to me is anybody who is looking out in space or is somehow crediting entities, spirits, gods, demons, angels, whatever the case may be, some sort of creatures or forces or elements that are out there in space that can be invoked to operate on your behalf or not. Those are all outward looking. I don't care whether you're looking to God or whether you're looking to crystal energy. They're the same thing. Exactly the same thing to me. If it works for both groups, it's because they believe it works for them. It is the mind that makes it work, not the God, not the gems. And that's why I believe all of them can claim a measure of success. But we also know that most of the time when you pray or want or wish, it doesn't work. The times that it happens are very rare. And they're potentially happenstance. Who hasn't talked to religious people who said, oh, that happened wonderfully because it was God. God made that happen. God blessed you. The reason that happened is because God loves you. But nobody's around the 10 million times things aren't right. And if they are, they say, God had a different plan. God had a different plan. At some point as a kid, you're like, wait a minute. God always wins here, doesn't it? But it's always after the fact. Nobody can tell me what God's going to do tomorrow. They can always tell me what God did after the fact. And I don't know why that seemed to me as a kid like it was pretty easy to spot, even though I had relatives that were grown-ups telling me, oh, you poor kid, you don't get it. So I began to realize that everything that I understood, everything that I believed in, everything that I made happen was due to a conviction, a way that I thought, a way that I believed. If I didn't have confidence, if I didn't have faith, chances are it wouldn't happen. The more faith and the more confidence I had, the more sure I was, the more things happened. It was like kind of obvious that it was working that way. You're like, oh, I get this. And of course, I'm not talking about faith in God. I'm talking about just a human faith, just knowing that something is going to happen. You having confidence, you having a level of assuredness in your mind that the outcome is something that you are looking for. Obviously, there's a lot of factors involved in that. We don't always get what we're looking for. There's other people involved. There's other situations involved. So I'm not talking about just magically getting what you want. There's no magic or miracles happening from some entity out there someplace. It's about me and how I approach life. I didn't exactly leave home unscathed. I had a lot of issues. I had a lot of anger. It led to a lot of bad choices. And life and my salvation only ever came about by examining my experience and my mind. No amount of asking God to make me feel better about my childhood made me feel better. Only forgiving perpetrators, only in learning that I was a link in a chain, only learning that I was not a victim, but I was just a kid that was raised this way. And if I don't pay attention and watch, I'm going to raise my kids that way too, that I've got to make some changes in order for this chain of events to quit. Yeah, I got beat by my mom, who got beat by her parents, who were beat by their parents, it went on and on. At some point, you're like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not a victim here. I have to step out of it. But those are all inner things. The spiritual search then for me has to do with the heart and the soul. But what is the heart and the soul? You don't really look at your heart and say, I feel good, let me fix that. Or I feel bad, what can I do? Your heart is how you feel it. It's not how you make the feelings happen, though. That comes with your perceptions, your thoughts, your experiences, the way your mind causes you to think. So to me, the spiritual search was not about praising God or praising quartz or praising a constellation. It was about changing my perceptions, figuring out how I could change the way that I felt and experienced life, because I felt like my life was unfolding based on what I had up here, and that if I wanted my life to be different, I couldn't change life. I learned that early on. I had to change this. When I'm on a spiritual search, it has nothing to do with outside entities. It has everything to do with this entity right here. This mind, this brain. This is the only thing that I potentially have control over changing. So that's that. As I'm on a spiritual search, I'm not looking for Jesus. I'm not looking for Buddha. I'm not looking for Shiva. I'm not looking for Allah. I'm not looking for any gods or ghosts or goblins or demons or angels or anything like that. My own personal interest has been to try and understand what is the underlying thing. What is it in all of them that create conditions for them all to be marginally effective, and all of them appearing to be effective in the exact same way, with the exact same mental mechanisms, with the teachings, and a fair amount of randomness. But what is it that makes it happen, if indeed it does happen, number one? And number two, is there a way to improve the capacity for it? So if there's something that you look outward to see, and you attribute that, whatever it is, be it some sort of a mineral thing, a natural thing, a beauty thing, a spiritual, sort of a religious thing or something like that, are simply additional layers. It doesn't matter if you think they're there. And if you are on a spiritual quest and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I need to be loving and kind and caring because God wants it that way, and life works better that way, then go for it. If you think my life is better because when I'm loving and caring and nurturing because I've got my topaz or amethyst crystal on or something like that, go with that. Do whatever works. To me, those are talismans. They're things that you might hang on to thinking, oh, this gives me power, because you don't realize you're the one that has the power. So you relinquish your power and give unconditionally to something outside of you. And that is going to work because you're doing it up here. You're taking care of it in your brain, which brings me to the keys now. So key number one, when you read verses, you read the verse as if it is a spiritual verse about you or about me. If I'm reading it as if whoever wrote this wrote it for me, or for anybody else that comes along and says, boy, I need help. What am I going to do? Let me read this. It's for you. It is for you. It's not about the people over there or those people over there or something in space or this race or that sexual orientation. It's not about any of those things. It's about your soul. Key number two, the soul is the subconscious mind. Think of this for a minute. Thousands of years ago, people are passing stories around. They're teaching how to take care of yourself. They're providing knowledge that is helpful to fellow human beings. But they don't even know what a brain is. There's a point in time back then where they thought the heart was responsible for the thinking. This is how you experience life. When you feel happy, when you feel sad, when you feel emotions, you feel it in your body. And that's what they thought. Well, that's where your thinking comes from. That's where your carnal mind is. However, they were intelligent people, so they recognized when somebody was maybe talking to a friend, a coworker, going about their business, taking care of their textiles, fishing, sheep, whatever it is that they are doing 2,000 years ago for their livelihood, they could take care of that business throughout the day while they're talking to somebody about the new house or their new girlfriend or something. They knew that there was something happening in the background making life work. My contention is that they said, oh yeah, that's the soul. That right there is the part of you that goes on after you die. When this body part of yours shuts down, the part of you that's in the background taking care of business when you're not even paying attention to it is your soul. And that would make perfect sense. I would, at thousands of years ago, I would say, oh yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that part of me functioning. We know today we can jump in our car, talk to your best friend, drive across the state, get across the state, get checked into your motel. And if you think, how did we get here today? You might not even remember the drive. If you're good at it, you're experienced because your subconscious mind is so conditioned, it's doing it in the background. The subconscious mind, for the purpose of this teaching, is the soul. Now, that having been said, I am not suggesting that the human doesn't have a soul or a spirit or something that lives on. I don't know that there is or isn't. So I don't want to put anybody off by saying that. What I do want to say is, for the purpose of understanding these, when you need to heal your heart, when you need to heal your soul or feel better about yourself, you do it through your thinking. You do it through time. You do it through processing. So there's another key. 2 of them then. Number 1, it's about me. Number 2, it's about my subconscious mind. Number 3, I am the story. The story is written in a way that it has a carrier shell to it, but it's written in allegory, metaphor, parable. It's written in a way that the outer shell has a meaning, but if you process it and you know how to read it and how to look into it, there's something nested inside of it. Let me real quick list a sample verse to show you how that works. I've used this example in my first videos, but I'll just quickly do 2 layers of it right here. The verse is, an anchored ship cannot sail. Layer 1, we can clearly see that. A ship in the water with its anchor out isn't going anywhere. That's all it means. It's a very literal translation. It's not metaphoric. It's just meant to be plain language. However, if that same verse is contained in a body of work that we know is a spiritual teaching, or somehow we connect that verse to a spiritual or a personal teaching, then we make it metaphoric. In this case, the reader is the ship. The ocean is life and everything that you're looking for. The anchor, or anchors, as usually the case is, are the things that you hang on to that prevents you from sailing free. Simple verse. It has a personal meaning. An anchored ship cannot sail. We read all of the verses that way, whether they come from Abrahamic traditions or Eastern traditions, Buddhism, it doesn't matter. We use that technique to read all of the verses, and they all reveal the same thing. So real briefly, in a nutshell, to me, a spiritual search is a science-based approach. Simply because I don't believe in magic, but I do believe in reality. And if something happens that looks magic, I believe it's real and we don't understand it. That's how I approach it. I don't look for ghosts, goblins, and orbs. Next, the verses are in layers. We know that there's an outer surface meaning, and we're not going for that. That's what the practitioners do. They grab the outer meaning. They don't go for the inner one. We're going for the inner one. This takes it to a new place. After that, you make the verse about yourself. It's a spiritual verse written by a teaching master at one point in time who says, this is for you, whoever is looking for this. And it's about your life here and now. You act upon this now. You don't look at it and wait until you die, thinking that by default it's going to come into play. You engage this practice while you are alive. So the verses are layered. They're about you. They're about your subconscious mind, because that's the only thing that we can manipulate. And the verse is written in a way that it contains metaphoric or allegorical, some form of parallels to who and what I am, to my life, to what I'm seeking. It's about me. Okay, so we know that the Buddha taught that way, and now we're going to take a look and see that Jesus taught that same way. Jesus taught the same thing that the Buddha taught. He just did it in his local language, in the cultural hues of his time and place. We're going to go to the Sermon on the Mount. I may not do every verse. It would take a long time to do that, but we'll start going through the verses and show how they unfold, and you'll see that Jesus teaches the same inner spiritual process while hiding it inside of an outward-looking thing. It's almost like the verse is like a human. You can look outward or you can look inward. The verses are the same way. They can be read outward or they can be read inward. When you make it about yourself, that's when it comes alive. So let's move on to the Sermon on the Mount. All right, here we go. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. How the hell does that work?